Can you hear me now? All right, David, we're up to 80 at this point, so we're getting there. I'd say
All right.
whenever we're ready to get started, we can kick it off here.
All right. Why don't we go ahead and get started? I'm going to kick things off.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and appreciate this opportunity this morning to spend time with Professor David Rogers here, who you've been watching throughout this course and enjoying the videos. We got great feedback on the videos, as we always do, because David, you are very engaging in those. They're extremely well done, and they're always
Thank you, Alec.
Always the top-rated aspect of our course are the videos of your presentation. So to have you here doing one live session for us today is obviously a privilege to us. It's never expected. We're lucky to have you here, and hopefully this will be an engaging session with three of the teams, and the rest of the participants will get something out of it as well. We'll do the three. We're today, just a quick agenda. We're doing reviews of three of the presentations for assignment 10, the value proposition roadmap, and these three were picked by the course leaders as being particularly interesting, and so we will go through those. And should we have time left at the end, if a few minutes to spend, maybe do a little bit of Q&A at the end as well. If you have any burning questions for Professor Rogers, you can ask those in the Q&A box that you'll see at the bottom rather in the chat window. But feel free as well to interact on chat during the session. Yi Lee is also one of our panelists today. She's one of your course leaders, and she'll be engaging people in the chat as well. So feel free to chat amongst yourselves there. And we'll kick things off this morning. The first presentation will be from, I've lost that already, from Gaël. My French is terrible, Gaël. You, who will be presenting on Alcoa. So we'll kick things off there. David, any initial comments from yourself before we get started?
Well, just thank you, Alec, for the kind introduction, and very happy to be here with everyone. It's really exciting to see the kinds of participants who are attracting to this program from all over the world, and to know that you are really engaging deeply with the material and really taking these ideas and concepts that I've tried to put forward and make accessible, and applying them to the kinds of business decisions and questions you're facing each day in your own jobs, your career, new opportunities that you're thinking about growing towards in your personal career path. First of all, just kudos to the teams, for everyone who submitted the value proposition roadmap. This is not, it's at the end of the program, it's a capstone, if you will, because it's a rather involved analytic process. It's a real in-depth strategic planning tool, which I've worked through with a variety of companies in different industries around the world. Of course, the goal, as I sometimes say when I'm doing this in person with a group, and I think you've learned this, but just to sort of reiterate, the goal of a value proposition roadmap is to take a very broad picture of a business and organization and really think about your value proposition. Think about how do we take a forward-looking view, not just that sort of snapshot, where's our business now, but where is it going? If we have a point of view, a future-facing view of where our industry and the market's needs for our services and goods and so forth are changing, how do we make sure that we are as relevant and essential in the lives of our customers in the future as we were relevant and essential to them in the past? So that's really the goal here, is to take this broad picture, big picture view and formulate this, not a single initiative, not a single sort of innovation or product, but this view of where do we see our company growing towards to again continue to have so much value in the marketplace. So kudos to all the teams that submitted, and I think a lot of teams did a really great job working in depth on this process. Our team leaders, Alec and the others, thank you. Help look through all of them and picked several candidates, and we settled on these three, not just because they're interesting and well done, but also that they're diverse. You'll see rather different kinds of businesses and different issues that grow up. So this is not a sort of gold, silver, bronze situation. It's more three interesting projects that each sort of surface different kinds of issues around the value proposition roadmap. So, and thank you for the teams for joining us for this webinar to present. How long should we plan, Alec, for just, I know you're keeping the time for each team to think about their presentation, and then of course I'll get some feedback after each one.
Yep. If the teams could try and keep it to between 10 and 15 minutes. So definitely brevity is appreciated. I know there's a lot of content in your deck, so please don't get stuck in the details of your slides. As I've mentioned to you already, Professor Rogers has had the opportunity to quickly breeze through them already. So
exactly. Okay. So I've reviewed the deck. So
10 minutes of feedback. Yeah. Okay. Sorry,
Terrific. Dave. So I would just on that point, you can do less on the background of the company than I've read, and I would say focus your time on the analysis in terms of who the customer is, what the value is, and your analysis of sort of what's changing. Terrific. Well, let's do our first group. Can we hand the presenter rights to?
We have the team presenting, or is the support team running the presentation? Okay. Here we go.
Okay. All right. Can you see me and hear me? All right.
We can see you. And then you're going to share your screen. We'll see the slides.
Yes, I am going to.
All right.
Can you see it all right?
We can see you.
We don't yet see your screen. We see you.
Okay. I'm sharing my screen though, but let me check. Partager. Okay, here.
If you're, there you go.
Says it started sharing. Terrific.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Sound is good.
Right,
Visual is good.
So my name is Gaël Giux. I'm the spokesperson for Team C5, which I would like still to name the members of, if you allow me. Alejandra Hidalgo, Julian Toshke, Solomon Osoko, Maxime Manier, and myself, Gaël Giux. And during this presentation, we are going to review how the value proposition roadmap can be used in the case of the aluminum market. Although the slide mentions Alcoa, and we have talked about this as the Alcoa presentation, and because this is a company I've been working for the past 14 years, I would like to highlight that this presentation is not representative of the strategy of Alcoa, at least yet, but rather is a study that our group did on the aluminum market and could apply to, I would say, several players in this market, right? So going back on the aluminum market, it has been characterized by I would say a regular growth of demand over the past 15 years, but also by a radical increase of competition driven by low-cost capacity coming online in the Middle East or in China, which has led to a significant reduction of financial margins of a major player here. Also, what is characteristic is that the quality of production has been leveling globally and resulting in a commoditization of a product globally, which makes, I would say, the product so much like a real commodity at this stage. Yeah. Just a quick couple points I would like to make on the aluminum production cycle. The aluminum is the product of a transformation of bauxite ore. That is something we can find in different regions of the globe. An important point is that the smelting process, which you can see at the top right corner of the slide, is a very energy-intensive process, which makes aluminum a significant indirect source of CO2 emissions, depending on what energy source it is using. So typically in Norway or Canada or Iceland, it's using hydropower, so kind of green aluminum. At the same time, the capacity in the Middle East or China is using carbon sources of energy, which makes them very CO2 unfriendly. So the second part I would like to highlight is the recyclability of aluminum. Currently, the recycling process that you see at the end there is resulting in the loss of metal purity and limits the uses of recycled aluminum in the application. So that's important for the rest of the presentation. So I wanted to make sure I highlight those 2 points before going in the framework by itself. Going into the framework itself. So we have identified 3 main types of customers in this market. And I would start with the industrial customers, the 2 at the bottom, the B2B customers, and I would list the example as Boeing or Airbus, for instance, for which aluminum represents a significant part of their cost structure. And they mainly value the material properties, that is a strong and light material, but as well as the ability to hedge forward the price of aluminum to secure the margins, right? So this is the first type. The B2C customers, and here I will list maybe Apple as an example, for which aluminum represents much less of their cost structure, but they also value the same quality of a material for its weight and resistance, but also for allowing complex designs. And the growing trend in this category type as well is the need to value the aluminum for its recycling aspects. Okay. The last customer type I would like to highlight are the commodity traders that I listed first, who are not so interested in the material itself, but rather that the fact that it is a commodity, it's a liquid market, and they are established supply chains. So this is a very radically different type of customers that has been growing in the past few years because obviously of the commoditization of the product itself.
Right.
So these are the 3 type of customers. Looking at the trends and threats that could impact this market forward, we listed 2 new technologies that are, I would say, related. The 3D printing technology that is developing for metals, a new process that is coming up to purify the recycled metal that could expand the range of uses. That was an aspect I discussed before. In terms of customer needs, as I mentioned before, I think the concerns on CO2 impact is coming up either as a result of some of governments, I would say, pressures or willingness to reduce CO2, but also as I would say company motto. I guess they would bring the CO2 aspect in their marketing. New substitution comes as well as a threat to aluminum. So new metals, titanium and magnesium, are being valued for the same qualities as aluminum, but also some other materials like composite materials. As you might know, Boeing and Airbus have launched aircraft that are using composite material instead of aluminum for the fuselage, for instance. So these are the main, I would say, threats or trends that could impact the market going forward. Going into the next step, which now we are focusing mainly on the B2C industrial customers. So the one who value not only I would say the material itself, but its ability to accommodate different designs. So and how the value that we have identified are seen to evolve in the future. So the material characteristic of resistance and lightweight are being challenged, as we just have seen, by other materials. So this is not, I would say, they are challenged. I mean, these are not the main value going forward. The ability to accommodate friendly design is going stronger and stronger. The fact that cell phones have designs that are more and more complex is something that brings customers more to the aluminum. As well, the recyclability of the material is also a very strong message for those customers. Okay, in terms of recycled content, which is a different aspect of recyclability, it has been challenged in the past few years, and I think companies tend to value much more now the CO2 aspect and the overall environmental impact of the materials they're using. Now, the following step was really to identify how we could use the trends that we identified earlier to redefine the value proposition to the B2C customers. And looking at the new technology, for instance, we thought that the 3D printing, for instance, applied to aluminum could allow much more innovative designs than the previous process were able to do. The purification of recycled aluminum should allow the customers as well to recycle more and reduce the impact of their production process. The blockchain technology, interestingly enough, is also a technology that should enable to value the green aluminum, which is the next topic. The ability to track the source of energy that has made the aluminum possible is an important step towards valuing the green aluminum and certify that the origin of the aluminum. And we have also identified an unmet customer need that would be the ability to co-design with a customer, allow them to partnership to ensure optimal material selection and production process. So these are the potential value elements that we have identified for this customer type. So combining all those, I would say, those elements, we have come up with a revised value proposition for this customer type. Before we identified value proposition as being the lightweight metal allowing creative designs. And in the new value proposition, we highlight much more the environmental friendly aspect, which is more and more important for the customers, as well as the reinforcing the creativity and the most creative designs. I think the 3D printing is really an enabling new design for the customers that they didn't think about before, and we can help them, I would say, use those designs through co-design programs with them. So this is the presentation for a group. I don't know if there was any question or if we wait for the end for the questions or comments. Alec, David?
Great. Thank you, Gael. So a really interesting roadmap you guys have designed. I like the case. It's not sort of a typical category you see as much, and obviously one that you bring a lot of knowledge and understanding of the industry. Sorry, I'm getting an echo of my own voice. If maybe somebody has speakers on that could put on mute. Terrific, thank you. So let me just highlight a few things. I'm looking back at, can we go back to step 1 and 2? I think that's what your slide number was, but step 1 and 2 in the slides. Terrific. So nice segmentation. In this case, of course, is a B2B firm. So your customer segments wind up being, the differences between the B2B industrial customers and the B2C, by which you meant they're industrial customers, but the applications, the products they're going into are sold to consumers. As you said, the examples of, I would, if you were making a follow-up presentation, just a very minor point, I would add the examples on each of these. I thought it was very helpful when you said, the second line was, for example, Boeing and Airbus. The third line, for example, was Apple. And the first line, if there's a name or who are some examples of maybe, financial firms who tend to be among the commodity traders. And interesting that that's sort of a growing trend. But yeah, really three clearly distinct segments. And as you said, and this is what we really look for at this stage, is that they each have different value elements, right? The industrial customers for the Boeing versus Apple have some things in common that they're looking for and others that are not. The other point I want to underline here, because I don't know if I always stress this enough. In my experience, the hardest part of doing the value proposition roadmap is when you get into value elements, there's a very strong tendency to put down products. Well, we sell this and we sell that, and we start getting into sort of a portfolio of products. But the whole point here is from the very beginning to reframe everything in terms of the value to the customer, right? To say what is the benefit they're getting. And I think you did this very well. In fact, I think sometimes in B2B categories, it's hardest for people to make that sort of mind shift, because we're aware of thinking something like a consumer good. Well, buy a piece of clothing, it's not a shirt, it's about fashion or style or something like that. And we tend to think very functionally. But even when the benefits are somewhat functional, it is very different to focus on the benefits. Right? So you're talking here about the fact that certain industrial customers care more about the machinability. Right, that's the real benefit to them. Versus others, it's more about the design, flexibility, the recyclability, and so forth. And some of these are sort of a B2C. It matters to them because it matters to their customers, and others it matters to them because it matters to their sort of own work with the materials. So I just want to point that out. This is really essential because it gets you off on the right foot with the value proposition roadmap to start looking at what you touched on, which is these substitutes. How other perhaps low-cost providers of a similar product, but sometimes it's a substitute product. Sometimes it's some other kinds of threats that impact your, the strength, the differentiated strength and ability of you to leverage that value. So nice job here. Can we move to the next the slide? The threats, I think, very well identified, nicely looking at sort of, some of these are sort of, it seems like a little more current, right? Clearly already in the market, starting to see these composite materials, the titanium and so forth. Others are sort of shifts in perceptions or attitudes, such as that interesting that the CO2 impact is becoming the more prominent sort of environmental concern or sort of pressure on the industry, on your customers versus the recyclability, which in an earlier era would be, you'd think about, aluminums from an ecological point of view. And then some things like 3D printing, which are a little more, maybe still nascent in terms of the scale of impact they may have. So a nice variety of emerging threats. And I think if you go to slide 4, the assessment of the slide 4, of what's happening. So this led to a pretty clear sense of what we typically see, which is certain value elements that you're in a position to sort of double down on and play up to and maybe increase or figure out how to take more advantage or deliver more value around, and others that you need to move away from. So if we can go to step 5. So the new potential value elements, I think this is really interesting. I would say, if anything, you could maybe even push these on 5 and maybe on 6 a little further in terms of just thinking of different ways. How would you take advantage of the 3D printing or the blockchain technology, for example? So blockchain, creating a green aluminum sort of standard. I guess what's interesting to me here is to think about how some of these might be best built out. Would you want to, for example, would this be something done by a single company like Alcoa, or would it require an industry consortium? Would it be a platform business model where it's you and a series of sort of preferred partners and vendors who are maintaining, for example, a green aluminum verification system? And these kinds of verification systems are one of the interesting business applications of blockchain that I see others in other supply chains, other kinds of industries are looking at right now, because it seems to be sort of a very promising application of the new technology. So sort of thinking about, what might that business model look like? Similarly, on the co-design, thinking of some of the top, B2C industrial customers, what would a co-design offering look like? What would you bring to the table? Who would be most interested? Would it be something aiming for sort of essentially it might be sort of the top of the market, the Apples, for example, so to speak, or would it be maybe companies that are, have less design savvy? and are going to benefit more from having a partner who knows more about how to rapidly and creatively develop new designs with aluminum, which they haven't done in the past. So, I think you've definitely identified directions to go, and I would say, to maybe push them a little bit further. But I think you've got great ideas here, and on slide 6, I think you have, if you go to slide 6, a really good sort of summary of your overview of where this is, this is going. One additional thought I had, and this is maybe perhaps particularly germane because you talked about commoditization of the category, but it's a useful sort of question, provocative question for a lot of businesses. A friend of mine, Saul Berman, says, because he came years ago out of the media industry and now he consults with all kinds of industries, but that was sort of where he cut his teeth. As the media industry was kind of going through the buzzsaw of the first internet, and suddenly content was free and everyone was figuring out how to make money. And so, particularly with a sort of commoditizable category, one that's facing intense price pressure on the traditional product category, sort of as a thought-provoking question, what would you do, Alcoa, if the product were free, right? If you concluded that the product had to be given away for free, what would you charge for, right? So and this is not tomorrow, but if you say, look, in 10 years from now, the state of the market of the product is going to be that the aluminum itself is free, can we charge for the data about the aluminum? Can we charge for, you've got people with options. You talked about that, and the whole commoditization and people worrying about their price structures. Could you charge for, and maybe it's not free, but zero profit, right? If everyone is selling at cost, the aluminum, where do you actually make money? Well, maybe you make money on the ability to guarantee customers a certain price in advance or something, helping them manage their price structures. Maybe it's around the design elements. Maybe it's around charging them for the green certification, which others don't do. Maybe you're charging them for, we'll give it to you for free, but we'll take off your hands. We'll do the recycling. You have to give it back to us, and then we'll use that. And that improves our margins. And it's not that crazy a sort of a question. If you look at even a mature industry like the automotive sector, automakers used to make money selling cars. And by and large, they don't right now. The selling of the car product doesn't yield a profit. It's the financing, right? And so, I've talked to and worked with some of those financing arms. They're a key part of now the whole business model and that's where they actually manage to capture the value back to the market that grows the business. If they finance none of the cars and they just sell the new cars, they wouldn't really be making any money. And yet they've evolved the business to operate in that way. So I think it's a great sort of framing question. And I think you've got some answers started to emerge here, but that sort of pushes you to really think about, okay, what would this look like? How would this monetize? How would we turn some of these into new revenue streams? And maybe, again, some of those changes might not happen overnight in the next 12 months, but you're building these capabilities or these relationships or this new value offerings around design and CO2 and verification and so forth. But in mind, how do these turn into actual revenue streams and business models in perhaps a 2 or 5 year time frame, because that really may be critical to the long-term growth of the company. All right. I'll take any questions from Gail before we go on, and we'll also have questions from anyone else at the end.
Hey, David. Looks like we have an interesting one from Marielle, who asks a question really for I guess this one's for Gael. How do you think the current leadership of Alcoa would receive these ideas?
Well, that's an interesting question, yes. But I'm trying to actually get them to listen to these kind of ideas. But it's, right now the company has gone through a lot of changes so far. So I don't think they are ready for this kind of radical, I would say, ideas. Yeah. But still, I think they I cannot reveal also to what is going on at the strategy level of Alcoa, but some of those elements are being considered, I should say. So,
yeah, David, do you have any advice for Gael on how he would approach senior management in a different way?
Well, one of the things that I, bringing these kinds of conversations to the table, there's always one thing to be aware of is, you have to take into account what's the current state of urgency in the company. What is the perception of top leadership about how imminent threats are? And one of the things that I find is helpful to sort of frame that conversation is to talk about different time horizons, because that makes it sort of very concrete. And you can even compare to some other industries and say, look, driverless cars, for example, are not going to transform the auto industry this year. But though, if you look at the automakers, they have all concluded that, look, if we do nothing, in 10 years, maybe 12, but there is a not too distant future point in which we're not going to be a business anymore, right? So you want to be able to think about and strategize around your near-term growth sort of imperatives, right? And if you're still a profitable company, of course, you're going to have goals from your quarterly returns, and that's not just a matter of sort of satisfying shareholders. That's also, that's what's going to finance the investment in some of these new business models and new opportunities, right? So you need to keep optimizing the core business, and then you also want to think about what's your time frame for sort of midterm new opportunities and growth. Something you could do that would happen, might deliver value, in the next few years. Perhaps with a degree of uncertainty, but doing something a bit different, but maybe adjacent to your current business. But sort of the third time horizon, I often do ask that question, though. How many years out do you think we might not be in business if we change nothing? And that helps, because sometimes you have a company that in the current quarter has a very good financial profile. And they say, and it's hard to take action because you say, look, we can't take money or effort away from what we're doing. We're hitting our EBITDA goals, and we've got to keep, these numbers up. But if you can say, of course, yes, part of the management of this organization has to focus on that. But if you agree that there is a longer term time horizon in which there is a substantial risk, then clearly we need to have a kind of if you will, a multi-pronged strategy. And framing it that way often helps senior leadership think about, and you resource and manage those different prongs, if you will, differently. But saying, look, we need to be both dealing with the here and now and also making strategic bets, if you will, or taking out an insurance policy, if you will, for future outcomes that are a few years out, but would have potentially a very significant impact on our sustainability as a business.
That's great.
All right, let's. I think we should move on just so we've got time for the other two groups. Thank you again, Gael. Terrific presentation. Great work by the team.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, thanks, Gael. Chaniga, next team ready to present. Support team, can you flip the presenters, please? And we'll bring up number 2.
Hang on. Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you. We can't yet see you, I think. There we go. Oh, we see you, Chaniga. Hello.
I can't hear you guys.
You can't?
We can hear you. Can you hear us? Hello, hello.
Oh. I can't hear you guys. What's happening? We tested
Can you hear
before.
Us? Hello, Chaniga, we are speaking.
I can't hear. I can't hear anything.
Okay.
All right.
Team, should we switch on to 3 while we work on the audio issues for?
I can't hear. Can't hear.
Yep.
Hello.
Okay.
You still can't hear us. All right. That's going to be difficult. Do we want to?
Should I just present them? Go ahead without hearing you guys. Is that all right?
Hold one moment. Just tapping to her. Alec, is the
Shall I?
Other team ready to go forward, or should we do with Chaniga without her hearing us?
Yeah. Support team, let's go on to number 3. If number 3, David Wenger is ready to present, let's skip to 3, and then we'll work on the audio issues with Chaniga.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
What's happening?
Perfect.
Okay, now we're a couple more people in here.
Okay, 1 second, David. We'll just
Yes.
get started. You
All
can.
right.
Great. Okay, I think we've resolved that. Hopefully, we'll get team number 2 up and running so that China
Right.
gets after. But David, appreciate you stepping up to the plate here, and we'll let you go ahead here.
Okay. Can you see the slide?
Yes.
Okay.
Zurich train station. I was there a couple years ago.
Really? Still looks the same.
Beautiful spot.
It's a bit more digital.
Yeah? A bit more digital. All right.
But still a nice place. Okay. Thank you very much for your time. Our group was Fatima, who's actually at the moment in Morocco, and Benjamin is somewhere on vacation. Myself, I'm currently in Zurich train station, which is all about. And okay. So the business in focus is actually Zurich main station. So this is the largest train station in Switzerland, which is owned by the Swiss Federal Railways. David, I hope you use the trains as well in Switzerland.
I did. I was en route to Basel.
Okay, nice. And for Swiss relations, it's really big. So there are more than 450,000 people or travelers every day. There are more than 200 shops in the train station, and actually more than 3,000 trains per day passing through the train station. And this makes it to the largest train station, as I said, but it's as well the largest shopping mall in Switzerland. And it's important to understand the business model behind it, because obviously we're not selling a product like in the example from Gael, what we're selling is the location. And so the business model behind it are variable rents. So each shop, the more turnover the shops make, the more rent they pay. And I think that's pretty important, especially from the perspective of the train station or from the operators.
Mm-hmm.
So now I try to go to the next slide. Okay, yeah. And so the key customer types we identified are, as I said, the shops. So there we have a B2B relationship. The travelers as well, which obviously is a B2C relationship, and the local residents as well, people who are living close by to the train station. In this assignment, we were focusing on the shops, so we didn't go through all the other customer types.
Okay.
From the perspective of the shops, the current value elements are pretty obvious. So for them, the most important things is the customer frequency. So how many people are passing in front of their stores, and of course how many are converted to customers who are entering the store. Another value element is the access to potential customers. And what's very important is the special law we have in Switzerland for shops in the train stations with the extended opening hours. So the value proposition for this customer type is identified as the optimal location for accessing travelers during the whole day, including weekends. I don't go into detail for the other customer segments. When we look at the emerging threats, especially for these value elements, so we heard self-driving cars before already, and this is actually a threat as well for the train station. So if self-driving cars are coming sooner or later, this might change the travel behavior of travelers, and maybe they don't pass the train station anymore. Another important threat are the changing customer needs. So there's a big trend for remote work. Means again that there are less frequencies in the train station, and so less potential customers. And from the side of the new competitors, of course, we all do online shopping. In private, I do this as well, but it's not good for our business because we're losing turnovers in the train station. And so this is actually quite a big threat as well. And as well, if you go to a large shopping mall somewhere else in the city, these shopping malls, they provide a great customer experience sometimes. And often we do not have the ability to offer this in the train station as well, since it's still a train station and not always the nicest building. When we assess the strength of the current value elements, so there are two which are challenged and which is still strong. So the good thing up front is that we didn't identify one which is disrupting, but as I said before already, the high customer frequency is threatened by the remote work and the self-driving cars. The access to travelers is threatened especially by online shops. And the one thing which is really, really a big value element and which probably stays and keeps strong is the special law for the extended opening hours, because people work more and more and more, and they really want these opening hours. They want to do shopping on the weekends and until late in the evenings. So our group had a really good brainstorming session to generate new potential value elements for the shops. I don't go through everything, but just an example from the different ones. So for new technologies, it's obvious that there is so much data around a train station with all the passengers, all the shops, all the mobility services. So why not provide digital services to the shops? So this can be dashboards or more analytics, so they can better plan their stuff. They can adapt their concepts and be more customer focused. From the trends in the customer environment, we just have to invest in the customer experience because we think it's really important. And this can be done on an architectural level. So maybe we need to rebuild some parts of Zurich train station, but as well with some click and collect features for the shops. So we should really, as SBB, we should really integrate the customers and or the travelers and the shops on a digital platform to offer some kind of click and collect products for the tenants and for the shops. Mm-hmm. And last point is connected to the first one as well. So these unmet customer needs goes again in the data area. So it's not just data from people, but as well from the whole building. And we should connect that. We should build a platform connecting customer data together with IoT data. And we're quite convinced that there would be an opportunity or many opportunities just to connect the shops closer to us, to SBB, and make it more valuable for them to be our customer, as from the perspective of SBB. When we synthesize this in a forward-looking value proposition, we highlighted the core elements, so the extended opening hours, and we changed it to the new value proposition that Zurich main station should be an optimal location for accessing travelers and local residents 7 days a week till late in the evening through providing a superior customer experience in the train station. We added here the local residents because up until now the train station is a place where you have to go because you're traveling, but actually it should become a place where you want to go. And this is quite a shift in the mindset, I think, from our perspective, that we actually want to keep people here in the train station, not just bring them out of the building as fast as possible. To achieve that, the specific areas of innovation have to be the customer experience, shopping experience, of course, digital services and architecture as well. So this led us to our vision that I mentioned that already, that Zurich main station shall be transformed to a place where people want to come, thanks to its comprehensive customer experience. And we do this with new digital services for the shops, the travelers, and the local residents. We should adapt the architecture and improve our product as a place. And that's already it. Maybe this is the right moment to say thank you to David and the whole Emeritus team for the whole course and all the students, and it will be great to connect.
Terrific. Well, thank you, David, and to your team members, Benjamin and Fatima Zahra. Really interesting project. Let's go back to the slide one or step one with the customers.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, maybe like a step two where you have the customers and the value elements. So the interesting thing here is, as you might recall from the lecture on platform business models, and I talked about why platform business models are accelerating and growing so rapidly in the digital era with digitally enabled platform businesses, but I also talked about how platform business models are not new per se, and that there have been analog versions around for a long, long time in some cases. This is actually one of them, right? But one of the examples we talked about looking at the theory of platforms is sort of the pre-digital antecedent to a digital marketplace, is a physical marketplace, something like a mall, which is basically the business model here. You're bringing together the train station itself is making money. If you think of the trains and the train service as separate and selling the tickets, the business model of the station is to bring together the shop owners and facilitate this this direct interaction between the shop owners and these different types of customers. So, and you made a good point here up front of delineating the differences between them, the fact that the travelers versus the local residents are really different. So in this case, because it's a platform and you're really bringing them together, the whole business model is about bringing them together. I would say, really, you can't really look at any one of these customers without looking at all three. Because in a sense, none of them, the shops can't possibly succeed unless you're also maintaining the value to the two customer types. Now you've done it. I mean, you actually did the analysis, but I just want to stress that because I know in the interest of time, you sort of focused a bit on the shops, but I actually want to focus a little more in my follow-up questions on the travelers and the residents, because I think in a sense, if the only way the shops will survive will be if you first fix or shore up your value to the other two. And all the things you could do sort of directly for the shops on kind of B2B or back end are good, but only in the degree that they will help solve the problems of the travelers and the local residents. So that's just one point I want to point is essentially to make a shop succeed, you have to kind of focus on the other two first. Clarification, you talked about 400,000 a day coming through the station. Do you know what percent of those or what fraction of that is local residents? Local residents currently 10% or 40% or 2% of the foot traffic?
That's a good point. Actually, we don't know, and that's a big challenge for us. We had a couple of pilots and tests how to find out. This goes into identifying customers through Wi-Fi, through smartphones, and there we really touching data privacy issues, and that's
you might have to do something. You might just do a foot traffic, the way that on the New York City subways, when they want to know how many people are using a particular train one day, sometimes they just have a person standing at the with a little manual clicker standing at the steps into the station entrance, clicking for every single person. Sometimes that's the best way to get a head count. So you might
then I need to motivate
kind of manual, or you do some random interviews, intercepts. Hey, you're here catching a train and try to figure out, because what would be interesting would be really what I would want to know is what's the current split, and then what's the trend? So the question is, are the number of train travelers going down or not? You've talked about, because you identified, I think, some important threats. If you go to step 3, sorry. Could you go to step 3?
Yeah.
Next slide.
Yeah.
So it would be really helpful to know, to think about in terms of where you're going to focus to a degree. Self-driving cars is obviously a future threat. It's not currently impacting the numbers, but it could be a significant future threat to the numbers of the train travelers, not to the local residents particularly. Remote work leading to less frequency in the train station. Now that should be a current trend. So how much is it, or has it? Have you been seeing? And you should have that data from that, because certainly you know about selling tickets. The nice thing here is it's the same company that runs the trains, right? So you said it is SBB, the train company, or the Federal Railway System that owns the station. So that's great, because that creates both. You've got data, right? So you can look at. You will actually have data on exactly how many people are coming in as a traveler to the station each day and from what locations. But also there could be some innovations there you could bring in. But so I would look at what's happening there, because I think the question is, you could, and you have started here, but I would sort of push you to take it from the vision level and get a little more granular on some of the ideas for maybe on these two sides of the two customers. How would you bring this vision to life of this better experience? Because I think you've sort of hinted at, but I think there's kind of more to do even still on either side. And I think for the trains, you talked about click and collect. I mean, if I'm still riding the train, but as you mentioned on one of your slides, I now have more information about what time my train is and whether it's ahead and what the connecting point is. So I have less sort of downtime, wasted time in which I'm just going to browse stores because I don't know when the train is or something like that, or I didn't plan. Now we're all planning our schedules much more precisely. But, maybe you could capture the customer while they're still on the train coming into the station. You have an app that's like an Instacart or a Rappi or something where you could pre-order items from any of the stores, and if you've even got a really fast connection, somebody goes around and picks them up for you and meets you with a bag, kind of like that, that duty-free bag when you get off the airplane. So you could, take advantage of the train experience there. Whereas on the local side,
I'm just coming from a meeting where we do such a prototype, or just discussing exactly this case. So that's great to hear. That's the kind of thing that would sort of focus on the traveler specifically. And then on the locals, I do think there's a potential. Alec and I were talking about this, and he was mentioning a couple stations in the U.S., big old traditional train stations, and America is less of a train country, and yet there have been a couple that have been really sort of revived with redesign of the architecture and really investing in the space, and turned into an attraction, a very attractive, place to go and shop and eat and such. And that's more focusing on the locals. So, and I think you could benchmark some of those stations, maybe, in Switzerland and perhaps, but other countries that have been a historic train station that's been revived and become a draw for the local audience, because it is somewhat different. I think architecture is probably going to be very important there, less for the travelers. Getting in that right mix
It might be that you want to get in certain things that are certain kinds of businesses you've never had. Maybe it's higher end restaurants, or maybe it's, you know, a place where you drop off the kids, or so you may need more events, right? That's the kind of thing that of course draws a local audience who knows that, you know, there's live music on Friday night at the station, right? Whereas the train traveler is not going to choose their train based on that. So I would look at some benchmarking there of kind of what others have done to build that local audience. But I do think you want to sort of, you know, you come up with a lot of ideas. You need to figure out, look, but if our future is still 90% travelers, you're going to put more energy into innovating for them than for the 10% locals. But if you say, look, it's 80-20 and the 80 is going down, it's just a matter of how fast, and the 20 has much more upside to grow, then maybe actually you want to sort of keep the business model primarily as it is for the 80 and really invest on growing the 20. So that's where I think knowing kind of how to prioritize would be really helpful. I had one other question which could relate to either or both, which is how flexible are you to fire and replace shops, basically? Because you said the business model is variable pricing, for example. So that means if a store is underperforming, it's less easy to, simply financially, they're easier for them to hang on, shall we say, than in a model where, you charge as much rent as you can for a given square footage. And so if a store is underperforming, they're going to more quickly have to move out, and you could try a different assortment. How easy is that for you?
When they're performing well, it's not that easy. But,
yeah.
But then we benefit from it as well through the variable rents. So that's good. And if they're performing bad, then it's pretty easy because they get bankrupt pretty quickly because the rents are just very, very high in Switzerland.
They're still pretty high. Yeah. Okay. So that's, from your point of view, that's good in the sense that you will have the flexibility to, if you decide for either or both customers that part of the strategy is, which stores do you want to attract, right? And you say, you know what, we need a few less of this type, and we think we need to bring in a certain type of tenant we've never had before as part of our strategy. It's going to be important that you have the flexibility to make those kind of shifts in your shops. Great. Any questions, Alec, or questions that came in from the audience that are worth touching on?
We have, just a few comments, people chipping in, but no specific questions on this one. And maybe the support team can keep David on as a panelist, and you can just breeze through on some of the comments that are coming in from some of the participants here, and just add his thoughts to those as well. And we'll see if we have our next presentation ready to go. I think we might have we have a backup.
Hey, terrific.
Backup lined up. So, David, thank you. It was a really nice, really good discussion. It was great reading your presentation as well. It was really thought provoking.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the inputs.
Thank you, David, and good luck with your prototypes and everything you're innovating. I will look forward to checking them out when I'm next in Zurich, perhaps on my next book tour in another year or two.
You should. We're connected on LinkedIn, so just
excellent. I will definitely let you know. Yeah. Great.
Okay. Unfortunately, Chaniga, we were not able to fix Chaniga's audio issues, but another member of her team, Kamelwan, has graciously agreed to step up in the firing line. And
terrific.
Kamelwan, if we can.
Kamelwan.
The support team's working here. Yeah, you're very quiet.
I can't hear her. But
Yes.
I don't see her either. I don't know if she's by her microphone or not.
Kamoan, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay, because we can't see you or really hear you. Okay. I think the support team, yes, yeah, we understand. We're trying to, we'll get this one to work. If it kills us here. 1 second, bear with us.
Oh, I don't know why.
There we go. We can hear you now.
There we go.
Really? You can hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
I think it requires you being in front of your computer. Don't leave.
Come back.
okay, I'm here.
Okay.
Okay.
I have to change my laptop. Sorry for the technical problems.
Okay, Kamoan, just to check as well, do you still have your phone active as well as the computer audio?
What?
I just thought I heard an echo there. I thought you might have two audio channels at the same time. Okay.
Is it better?
That's better. It's great. Okay.
That's good. Yeah. Very nice, clear sound. Good.
Hi, is it better?
Yes. Yeah. Can you hear us okay?
Very good. Can you hear us?
No, I can't hear you guys.
Oh, no.
Oh, goodness. Not again. Can you see
Okay, cool.
our texting? Uh-oh. Now I'm getting my voice echo.
Okay, I'm trying to share the slides.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. But we can't hear you again. You seem to be.
She's got her mic off.
Yes.
She's muted. I don't know if she muted herself or if she was muted, but.
I got muted by the host.
Oh, okay.
Great.
Right.
Now we can hear you.
Great. Ready to start whenever you are, Kamoan. I'm glad we get to see this presentation.
Okay, sure. Hi guys, hi everyone. I'm from Section E Group 4, and today I would like to present the case from the retail sector. We're choosing the retail store from Singapore named North Point Shopping Center. This is one of a very large and famous store in Singapore, because the reason why we choose this is because retail sector is actually involved directly with customers. Therefore, if there is any change in technologies or customer behavior, that would be the one that get affected very fast from digital transformation. And also one of my teammates are in Singapore, so we choose this. And just a basic background here. This mall is in a good location, very connect well with the MRT and all those bus interchanges. And now it gets refurbished. So maybe it's about the good time that we get to really study if they can improve anything. So moving on to the key customer types by value received, we can identify 4 types here, ranging from families, millennials and retired, and merchants. I will go briefly, but from the first 3 groups, the family, millennials, and retired are those who come to shop at the mall and come to socialize and also run personal errands here. And the merchant would be also another group that is quite large but play different roles. There are those who seeking to find a place to really to distribute their goods to the end users. But in this case, we would like to focus mainly on the family group that I would present further. But let's move on to the emerging threats. We can see that from the threats here, because the world is moving so fast and there are a lot of new technologies. So if you are not be able to use or utilize the technology in a great way, then competitors of you would do it before you did, right? And nowadays, mega malls in the city area are starting to offer wider product range and better service at a lower price. So that would be one of the competitors if you're still doing nothing. And there also a change in customer needs. As we know, nowadays people go shop online. Some people would probably prefer to shop online and then they can shop everywhere, aside from rather than going to the mall itself, right? So that would be one of the key threats. And all right, okay. Then moving on to access the strength of the current value elements. Well, we see that. Okay, let's take a look at the first row here. We can see that for those that has decrease in value to customer, the experience they probably face. Most of them have to face with long queues during their paycheck, the payment at supermarkets or at the restaurant. And sometimes, customer has complaints a lot about the cleanliness and hygiene at the kids' play areas, because we're now focusing at the family segment. So that would be some of the area that we see that it decrease in values. But aside from that, in the aspect of leisures and socializing, we see that there actually has a potential to increase value to the customers in terms of offering a bigger space for community interactions or to help more activity to promote engagement and to attract more people to come to the store. Okay, so now let's moving on to the next step, step 5. In the process of generating the new potential value elements to the customers, we are actually considers many factors, new technologies or trend change in customer environment, or even the unmet need can come in play. Let's have a look at the technology first. I believe that the mall can probably make a good use of their analysis from the big data, or even the location-based tools like to help with their targeted advertisement, to approach and target the right group of the customers. In this case, it's family. And aside from that, they can actually create a fun and immersive place for people to shop using the tools like augmented reality, AR or VR, virtual reality, can help with the product introduction or product reviews or even product trial to create like a gimmick for the customers to be more willing to try on the product itself. Or they can use the chatbot to answer all the inquiries in a very impressive way, or maybe further surprise the customer by using the drones or robots in delivering the product to the customers themselves. Or even the payment to fix the problem of long queues, they can use cashless payment or even implement a contactless system, just like Amazon did, for example. Aside from the new technology that I just mentioned, the trend in customer environment or behavior also play an important role as well. One of the key things that I believe no one would deny is nowadays convenience is the king for all customers. And having a good lifestyle, a lifestyle that the need or the keens toward socializing. That would be some of the trend that we should not neglect. But one thing, a specific trend in Singaporean market is actually the fact that the popularity of residential developments in Singapore market is actually becoming more booming. The residential estates that really sit on top of the shopping mall itself. So that would be the area that we can further look at. Aside from that, I also see that there are customer needs that most malls haven't really tapped into yet, which is the fact that it doesn't really have much space for them to really socialize or interact with one another. Space in this case, I mean probably like open area for them to really enjoy the atmosphere, you know. Yeah, so among all the things that I just mentioned, let's move on to the summarizing cards, like synthesizing a new forward-looking value proposition. So to sum up, we believe that this mall can become a convenient hub for family to come shop, play, and connect with their friends. Therefore, the core element that we can strongly build on would be the fact that they should utilize their space more efficiently. In terms of that, I mean to increase the space for leisure and socializing. For example, having the open air rooftop garden or the community club for people, or even the public library, who knows, right? And moreover, we can have the event or activities could draw in people both from online and offline to engage and to really come and join their community there. And for other aspect is some of the aspect that we see we could weaken but still need to improve is actually the experience the customer have. They would love to get the novel shopping experience, so we could delight them with all those things using all the technologies or the multi-channel that we can reach and offer greater experience to the customer. Aside from that, we can also coming up with new innovative or more customized product as well. And for the area that we should disrupt or deprioritize are those of the traditional communities that still undifferentiate. Yeah. And for the elements that we can really promote or create more is to extend our product and service also to the residential, which could be on top of the mall itself. Yeah. Okay. So in order to summarize, I think in order to thrive in the future, the mall can actually make use of its big data so that it can understand more about its customer segment in each segment and be able to predict their behavior and come up with the better offerings. And also, it could make a good use of technology to really provide the experience, that personalized experience that the customer nowadays loves. And most importantly, it can actually expand its offering to incorporate the mixed use of estates and also to help boost up the revenue as well. Yes, thank you.
Terrific.
Okay.
Thank you, Kamawan. So a great presentation, great, really interesting analysis. Obviously some similarities actually with the one we just saw, not a train station, but again, trying to create that sort of mixed shopping and experiential space that's going to draw in or hold on to shoppers and tenants both as competition, as the competitive environment is changing. I think if you go back to step 2.
Okay.
So nice distinction of sort of the different segments here. I guess the only thing I would say on the value elements in a couple cases, I think you could get more specific. and again, make it more about what's the value to them. So for example, you include shopping, food, restaurants, play. I would break those out. I think those are different. And I would try to distinguish, the family shopping versus the millennials shopping. My guess is the motivations are actually different, right? What they're looking for in shopping, those two groups is different. And you get into some of that actually in your later slides. You talk about the fact that convenience and price, that they're losing competition on that, and that maybe that's not what you want to compete on, for example. So that would be sort of the additional sort of level of specificity I would add here. It may be that if you look at the customer types, that for some of these more than others, part of the value they look for as a shopping experience here in the past was, wide selection and low prices, or maybe it wasn't ever low prices. Maybe it was wide selection and convenient location for shopping. And then that sort of draws out what you did you get to, but I just want to underline, that draws out some of the things that came up in terms of the fact that, some of these, they're now getting more competition from others, other shopping venues and so forth. And we're not going to be the low price kind of maximum selection, for example. And that sort of helps highlight, what element of that shopping experience are we, again, is sort of being disrupted or weakened, and which elements are we going to sort of need to bolster or increase. So taking something like shopping or food and restaurants, and again, moving it from sort of the, I would call that the product category, what are the products, and instead say what's the benefits, allows you to, again, both see how the same product has a different benefit for different customer segments, which I think you are aware of in your analysis. And the other is how that draws your attention more to substitutes and competition. Because it's not like, well, we have shops, other people have had shops, nothing's changing. We've always had shops and there have been other shops to compete with. Well, no, what's changing is that for this segment, what they look for in our shops was this value element. And that kind of benefit is actually increasingly available everywhere. So it'll just help guide the sort of setup, I would say, some of the later analysis, which you do, and you did actually touch on those points. So it's not that you missed it, but just a point for everyone as you're working on that first step of a value proposition roadmap. Really nice summary statements you did here on the right. For example, I like the one, it wasn't the one you followed through on, but the retirees, you did capture their overall value proposition was a little different. A safe, comfortable, accessible location for you to stay active, connect with friends, and spend quality time. That's really interesting. That's a very different value proposition than the same stores you're walking into if you're the millennial, right? What you're judging it on is quite different. So, and I know as instructed, you picked one to do the deep dive, but I think if you did a deep dive on retirees, you would have gotten into some really interesting things about safety and access and ability to stay active, and that maybe there's certain things you want to innovate there that build those value elements. The whole stay active. Maybe you want to create a gym that's specifically for older people or something, in the mall. So let's see, step 3, if you go to that one, I think you had a very really nice, thorough analysis here, looking at both some of the technologies that are shifting around advertising and retail and data. Looking at, as you touched on, what is the specific threat of the mega malls, for example, versus the online shopping. So you've got two sort of strong competitive sets, pressures, which you might say the sort of symmetric and asymmetric competitors, because the business model for online retailers is somewhat different, and the changing customer needs. Step 4, if you go ahead to that, again, I think you've got, you pinpointed sort of the areas that are more challenged and those that are stronger. I think, thinking about family, I think you identified specifically some good pain points that you followed up on, like the things that are difficult for them now. It's things like the checkout line. It's the competition of online shopping for some of these family shoppings. The question about, are your retail stores really differentiated or not? And then you looked at how leisure and socializing could actually be an increasing strength if you tap into some of the unique benefits of your location and the size of your space, and that may allow you to meet certain leisure and socializing needs or create value there in a way that some of the competitors can't. Step 5, you can go ahead to that. I think we've got a lot of great ideas here. I guess my one sort of thought, sort of taking away, and I'm not sure if this would be on step 5 or step 6, is that looking at all these ideas you have, as they sort of fit into a few broad categories. You've got some which are around convenience, which you stressed is really being important to them. So around the value of convenience. So you've got some innovations that would be more about making the experience more convenient. Specifically, for example, one of the ones that stuck with me was the if Northpoint can provide contactless payment or some sort of payment solutions that allow the checkout process to be simpler and faster, that makes that convenience for the shopper quite prominent. And you had some others that related to convenience. Then you had some different ones that were more about this, I think what you called it, well, if you go to slide 6, you called it the novel shopping experience. And that's where I see like the AR and the VR, and do you have something where you can stand, you see some of these, you can stand in front of a mirror and see clothing on you without trying it on, or maybe you want to have like a headset put on or something with a chat bot, and you'd sort of think about with a family, you might want to sort of break these out to a degree, particularly the novel experiences. What's targeted for the child and what's targeted for the parent. Because it may be that the parent wants the short checkout line, the child wants the cool chatbot or something. And you would design a different chatbot if it was to entertain the child as they're in the mall versus to help the parent like get the quickest way to the store they're going to next or something. And then the third is this sort of broad bucket I would think about is it comes into the new elements is the changing that mix, creating, investing in residential units. And part of that, I guess, is actually having the residential units and literally having sort of residence itself in the same space. But the other would be maybe some of this, as you said, the more diversified tenant mix, so that even for the shoppers who don't live there, who are coming to visit, that it's kind of more parts of their life that you've got the salon or some of those things in. So sort of changing that kind of the role, broadening the roles that it plays in your life as a customer and as a family. So that was just a thought, just sort of an organizing thought in terms of thinking the vision of where this fits together, and sort of changing that mix for of the role it fits in the life for the shopper, creating things that maximize the convenience, even though you're in the traditional retail channel, so to speak, and then things that are sort of novel and fun and interesting. And again, you're focusing on who's the specific. Is it the young children? Is it the parents? Is it the millennials, et cetera? That sort of it gives you something to talk about and remember your trip to Northpoint versus other locations. But a lot of great, very specifics, interesting ideas around using digital technologies, using data, thinking about the retail space itself, thinking about the kinds of tenants you want to partner with in shops. So great, thank you for you and the team. Really good work. Looking at this, and how do you stay competitive in Singapore is a very dynamic retail environment in such a condensed footprint as a city state. So it's if you're going to innovate, you've got to really be thinking fast like this. So it's great to see the ideas you've come up with and put a lot of strategizing into for the group. So thank you. We've got a few minutes left. So if we've got maybe if there was a question specifically for Northpoint Shopping Center, or if not, if we've got any sort of overall questions that came in on the Q&A, I'm happy to take them for 5 or 6 minutes.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions there on the Q&A, David, and if you want to take yours, just a few comments through on the chat specific to Northpoint, mostly around appealing to new niche segments, such as someone Chung Wang here must be familiar with the area, says it's actually a big draw for military personnel in the area. So designing specific experiences for the niche segment. Another comment came through for appealing to gamers, having specific experiences for gamers and creating a draw for those. So yeah, most of the comments there featuring new market segments. And so great, good stuff.
That's a great point in terms of thinking about your customer segments and getting and drilling down. And sometimes that niche can be a great opportunity to create some targeted experiences for something like, as you said, military personnel or gamers, and creating, one really interesting, exciting experience for them can really help build that element of your customer base.
Right. Yeah, we've just 5 minutes left. There are a couple of interesting questions here come through on the Q&A, one from Mehmet and one from Ozzy. On Mehmet, it's a question I'm sure you've had numerous times in the past, on how do you basically change a large corporate culture to make it more innovative, to basically transform culture for innovation, for digital innovation. I don't know if you want to take that one or the Ozzy's question on experimentation and customer validation.
Let me take Ozzy's first because it's more specific, and we'll sort of pick up on that in Mehmet's. So Ozzy's question was, what type of experimentation should be done to validate assumptions and calibrate the strategies as customer expectations change? And taking this, if we're thinking about specifically the, some of the kinds of the 3 projects we just saw, for example. So if you think back to the lectures on innovation and thinking about models for innovating through rapid experimentation, we talked about 2 different types of experiments, business experiments, convergent and divergent. And I make that distinction because they really are used for different purposes. Convergent is more later in the innovation process. So the kinds of things we're talking about here is much more validating assumptions. This is going to be, I think, in many cases, more divergent experimentation. So this is where you're going to be creating prototypes, minimum viable products, creating, not building the whole thing, but if you say have an idea that you want to create a service that you can pre-order items in the store before you pull into the station in Zurich, and they're waiting for you in a bag. What are the assumptions here on the customer side? Who would use it? What kind of products would they use? How would they know about it to use it while they're still on the train, et cetera? Would they buy? What kinds of things would they be more likely to buy or not? And then you'd have business model side assumptions like, how quickly could things be picked up? Would you do this with all the stores, or would you have to start with a subset? Can you charge an additional premium, or would the stores subsidize the cost of the person, the runner who's kind of going between? And some of that could be done like on the store side, maybe simply through interviews. And you might actually want to do sort of, as we said, create a simple prototype to test out on the customer side. Who would use it? If you give them some options, what do they pick? And doing it at a very small scale, very manual, so to speak, before you try to actually create something that can scale up and be done across, everyone on every train pulling into the station. So I think divergent experimentation, if you look back at the notes on that, the lecture on that, is what I would think about, using that as sort of a template for thinking about and understanding how customer expectations are changing. To Mehmet's question about building a organizational culture, which is entrepreneurial. He says, quote, "We are launching corporate innovation programs. According to your experience, what are useful strategies to form a culture and an incumbent to embrace fast change?" So one of the things that we talked about was the importance of, setting expectations around failure. And we talked about it's really important to define your risk tolerance. Teams who are working on innovations that are a bit different, so that people feel comfortable with trying ideas, even if they don't know which ones are going to succeed or not. Budgeting around that, setting everything as a set of hypotheses and what you're testing, and really one of the things I think is really important is leadership to take the time to underline and celebrate ideas that were attempted that didn't work out, but were definitely worth pursuing and were managed properly. They didn't, wastefully take too long and too many resources to go down a path before figuring out that, this isn't really going to work. I was working with a company recently where the leadership came in and they found that the culture of the organization, the one thing that they saw as a weakness was people didn't feel that they could fail. They felt everyone had to sort of strive for perfection. And they thought that was something as the new leadership they were concerned about. So something they did was they, at their first sort of, leadership summit, where they had all the top 100 or 150 managers, I forget, from the company come together. They said, we want everyone has to make a short presentation, but your presentation can't be on a success. You have to present on something you did, on a failure, something you did that didn't work. They want to tell you, what did you try and what did you learn from it? This is important because really stressing everything that, every innovation, every opportunity you explore that doesn't maybe come to fruition really should be an opportunity for learning. And that's the key of failing smart. And then they actually everyone had to vote on the best failures, right? It's like and so this sets the stage. Everyone feels like, okay, I have to stick my neck out, but so does everyone else, right? It's easier to do that when everyone else has to come forward and talk about something that they did that didn't work out. And then actually judging each other and saying, look, yeah, what did we really learn from? What was some of these could be or were really valuable to the organization because of what we didn't learn. And everybody voting and say what was the best one that we learned the most from was a really great way to sort of start the changing conversation. So I think you want to look at sort of rituals and mechanisms that are being led by leadership to really show the willingness to take risks. And then I think you want to also look at the organizational model. And it's not a matter that you talk about launching corporate innovation programs. It's not necessarily the right model for your organization. It may depend that sort of everyone is suddenly becoming an innovator. You probably have people you want to be really focusing on the core business, optimizing the things you already do and know best. So it's a matter of figuring out, how do you form teams around new projects, these innovation programs? How do you form them? How do you resource them? How do you set limits? You want to have processes. How do you release funds to them? You want a process that's probably more like a venture investing board rather than whatever your traditional project approval process is, because you don't want to draw up a lot of ROI projections because they're just going to be made up. Too many unknowns. It's more about making small investments in ventures. And you want to have a process where projects get approved, project approval, so that you identify what are some of the key sort of threats or opportunities, exactly the kind of things that came out of these value proposition roadmaps, by the way, that you did. Those sort of, as you saw on the last slide of each deck, you don't necessarily have the projects, but you have an agenda. Right? You've got a bunch of directions where you say, we should be looking at this, we should be looking at that. So creating that agenda and you don't just have teams going off doing innovation, whatever idea comes to them, but you say, look, this is our big agenda. We're looking at these 3 or 4 or 5 big ideas and growth strategies. We want you to come up with specific ideas that you think might work there. And then pitch them to us. And then the ones that get some initial approval and funding, here's the process for getting some support, taking it forward, validating it, bringing it back, and deciding whether, great, we're going to keep going, or it's fine. That didn't seem to be promising. We're going to shift on to one of the other ideas you pitched. Setting up those kinds of structure. I'm a big believer that we build culture by doing. I don't think we sort of get in a room and have an offsite and all decide that we're all going to be innovative and free spirits and creative and not be held back by the past, and then that's just going to happen. I think we need to put in place these sort of processes and structures and steps that people take in different roles, whether it's joining a team or submitting an idea for others to work on, or being on the committee that approves investments in new opportunities for a specific identified, area of strategy. Those are the kinds of processes you need to put in place to really build out an innovation culture through innovation practice, I guess I would say. All right, so we are at time. I'll before I hand it back to Alec with any last notes for you guys, I just want to say thank you to everyone. It's been great having you all in the program. It's a real pleasure for me to have the chance to reach out and teach students all over the world in this different modern, very digital format, different than what I was doing a couple of years ago. And I encourage you all to keep in touch. As I say, please. I'm easy to find, LinkedIn in particular. If you send me a LinkedIn invite, just please add a note. There's always that option, add note. Just say, hey, I just took this class with yours, so I know how we're connected, and I'll be on the lookout for those. And whether it's these 3 projects, what's happening next year with Zurich, train station or the aluminum industry or any of the other things you're working on. I'm always interested to hear what challenges you're each working on in your own businesses, and because you guys are going to be the ones who are driving, digital innovation in the next way forward for so many of our industries and companies around the world. So, best of luck to all of you, and keep in touch.
Great. Thanks very much, David. Appreciate your time again today. Thank you. And thank you to all of our participants who've been through this course. It's great to interact with quite a number of you during this session. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you got a lot out of it. The learning experience was great. And just one last comment, if you could, the support team here is posting a survey link just for this webinar so we can get your feedback on this session. But also as well, if you have not yet filled out the program survey, which you should have received, and if you did not receive a link to the program survey, if you could just send a message to program support and ask for them to resend that, because that we really greatly appreciate. We spend a lot of time reading through your comments and understanding where we can improve this course as we go forward. So any comments you have, positive and negative, we take it all. We take it all on the chin sometimes, but we love to get that feedback from you because it helps us to continually improve this course. And I want to say thank you to you all, and greatly appreciate your time. It's been fun for me. It's great to have a chance to chat with you as always, David. Sometime at some point, hopefully we'll get together in New York, but until then, yes, we'll sign off. Thank you again.
Take care, everyone. Take care. Be well.
Bye.